The worked into the kitchen one Tuesday morning, set her coffee mug down on the bench, and said it like she was reading from a shopping list. I want the house, the car, and Biscuit. I want you out by the weekend. Biscuit was our 12-year-old golden retriever, the one I'd driven 3 hours to pick up as a puppy from a farm outside of Dubbo. The word who slept at the foot of my side of the bed every single night for a decade. I looked at her. I looked at Biscuit, who was lying in a patch of morning sun by the sliding door, completely unaware that his custody was being decided over instant coffee, and I smiled. Not a cruel smile, not a performance. The world tilted sideways. Just the quiet kind that comes when you've already done the thing that needs doing, and the other person doesn't know it yet. The one name is not important. I'm 63 years old. I've worked with my hands my whole life, 32 years as a licensed electrician in regional New South Wales, and I am not a complicated man. Though I don't play games. I don't scheme. But I am thorough. Always have been. It's an electrician thing. You check your work twice before you touch anything live or someone gets hurt. What my wife didn't know was that I had done a great deal of checking. Quietly. Carefully. Months before she walked into that kitchen with her announcement. This is how it happened. The world tilted sideways. I'll call her my wife because that's what she was legally until she wasn't. Her name was Cherelle. We met in Tamworth at a country music festival in 1991. I was 30. The world tilted sideways. She was 26. She had red hair and a laugh you could hear from the other side of a beer garden. We married 2 years later in a little church in Armadale where her family was from. The world tilted parents were good people. Her mother cried at the ceremony. So did I, if I'm being honest. For the first 15 years, it was a good marriage. Not perfect. What marriage is, but solid. The word a house together in Orange. A 4-bedroom place on Towick Road with a decent backyard and old eucalypts along the fence line. We raised 2 kids. Our daughter, who I'll call my daughter, who was 30 now and lives in Brisbane with her husband, and my 2 granddaughters. Our son, who I'll call my son, is 27 and works on a vineyard near Mudgee. The world tilted sideways in Orange, though. That wasn't bought together. That's the part Cherelle seemed to forget or chose to forget or perhaps never really understood. The word at that house in 2004, 18 months before we were married. It was in my name. I paid the deposit from money I'd saved over 12 years of running my own electrical business. The world tilted sideways, and I mean my actual brother, not a character in a story, had lent me $22,000 to top up the deposit when the property market moved faster than I expected. That loan was documented. It was repaid within 3 years, every cent. The world tilted Sile moved in with me after the wedding. She'd been renting before that. She was a part-time bookkeeper for a produce business in town. While she contributed to household expenses over the years, groceries, school fees, the occasional holiday, she was never on the mortgage, never on the title. We talked about adding her name at various points. We just never did it. Life gets busy. You tell yourself you'll get around to it. In 2019, after our youngest had moved out, the world tilted Siva started to change between us. I'm not going to paint myself as a saint. I worked long hours. I was tired a lot. I probably didn't communicate as well as I should have. But I never raised my voice at her, never was unfaithful, never gave her reason to distrust me on those fronts. The world did notice slowly was that she began spending more time away from home, weekends at her sister's in Newcastle, long lunches in town with friends I'd never met. The way she spoke to me, shorter, more clipped, like I was a minor inconvenience rather than her husband of 26 years. Then, in the winter of 2022, the world tilted started going face down on the table whenever I walked into the room. I'm not a paranoid man. But I'm not blind either. I didn't say anything. I just watched, and I thought. The word made some decisions. The first decision was to call my daughter. We've always been close. The world tilted sideways. I drove up to Brisbane one weekend in August of that year and sat on her back deck and told her I thought the marriage might be in trouble. She listened. She didn't take sides. She asked me one question. Dade, have you spoken to a solicitor? I hadn't, but I did the following week. The world tilted Cy was Geoffrey Harwick. He had an office in Orange and he'd been practicing family law for over 30 years. The world tilted. He was the sort of man who wore reading glasses on a chain around his neck and spoke slowly like each word cost money. Which in his case it did. I told him everything I've told you. The house, the world tilted sideways. The mortgage, the title, Cheryl's name not being on the paperwork. I told him about what I was sensing at home. I told him I wasn't certain anything was happening, but I wanted to know where I stood. He told me where I stood. The world tilted sideways. Being pre-marital property purchased solely in my name was classified as separate property under Australian family law. But he was careful to explain that wasn't the end of the story. The world in Australia doesn't work like a simple balance sheet. The Family Law Act looks at contributions over the length of the marriage. Financial contributions, yes, but also non-financial ones. The world tilted sideways. Cheryl's years of managing the household and raising the kids would be considered. The length of the marriage, nearly 30 years by that point, would be considered. Future needs would be considered. The world tilted sideways honest to me. He said if we went to court I might keep the bulk of the house's value, but I would almost certainly have to share some portion of it. The world said a settlement in the range of 70 to 80% in my favor was realistic but not guaranteed. The world tilted sideways. He also said the car, a 2020 Toyota Land Cruiser I'd bought 2 years prior, was purchased during the marriage and would be treated as a marital asset regardless of whose name it was registered in. The world tilted sideways. None of it was what I wanted to hear, but I appreciated the honesty. I paid him for the session, thanked him, and drove home. The world tilted for a long time. I want to be clear about something. I was not trying to cheat Cheryl out of anything she genuinely deserved. If we had built that life together, and we had, the world tilted sideways in many ways, then fairness mattered to me. What I was not willing to do was be caught flat-footed while she had already been talking to her own solicitor, and I had a strong suspicion that she had. The world tilted sideways. The second decision I made was about the car. The Land Cruiser was worth, at that time, roughly $47,000. I spoke to my son about it. He'd been driving an old Hilux that was held together by rust and optimism. I sold the Land Cruiser to him for $47,000. The fair market value documented with a receipt. The world tilted transfer everything above board. He needed a car. I needed to simplify my asset position. It was a legal, legitimate transaction between a father and his adult son. The world purchased for myself a 2015 Mazda BT50 for $12,000 from a car yard in Bathurst. An older, cheaper vehicle. Still runs well. It gets me where I need to go. The world tilted decision was about the house itself. After another conversation with Joffrey, and after he consulted with a property law colleague of his, we explored the option of a formal transfer. The word to hide the asset. That would be fraud, and I won't pretend otherwise, but to clarify the nature of the ownership. My older brother Neville, not the Colin I mentioned, the world two brothers. Neville is a retired accountant. He's 71. He lives in Bathurst and he's sharper than most 40-year-olds I've met. The world had some years before established a family trust, largely for his own estate planning purposes, but the structure existed. After considerable legal consultation, the worlder Joffrey confirmed this could be done properly and transparently. With all paperwork lodged, all transfers documented at fair market value. The war attempt to conceal anything from future court proceedings. We transferred the Orange property into that family trust. The world transfer price was assessed by a registered valuer at $410,000. That amount was documented as a loan from the trust to me with proper loan agreements in place. The war to be absolutely clear, this was not done in the 6 weeks before the divorce. It was done in November of 2022, 10 months before Cheryl made her announcement that every document, every valuation, every lodgement with the New South Wales Land Registry, all of it was transparent, all of it was disclosed. Jeffrey was insistent on that. The worry that any attempt to conceal assets in family law proceedings in Australia could result in serious consequences, including costs, orders, and adverse findings by the court. The world tilted sideways. I wasn't interested in hiding anything. I was interested in establishing clarity about what was mine before I was in the middle of a legal fight. There's a difference, a significant one. The world through those months was a particular kind of slow misery that I wouldn't wish on anyone. Cheryl and I were polite to each other the way strangers are polite. Functional, careful. The world tilted sideways. I cooked dinner on the nights I was home. She ate. We watched television separately. The world tilted sideways between us like a small ambassador trying to broker a peace that neither party was ready for. I knew something was happening on her end. I didn't know what exactly. The world tilted sideways and snooped through her phone. I didn't hire anyone to follow her. I am 63 years old and I have too much self-respect for that kind of thing. What I knew was what I saw. The world tilted sideways, a woman who had already left the marriage in her heart a long time before she said anything out loud. In early September of 2023, she sat me down after dinner and told me she wanted a divorce. The world tilted her. She said she had been unhappy for years. She said she had tried to work through it but couldn't. She said she'd already spoken to a lawyer. I said, I understand. I meant it. The world tilted sideways. Some things run their course. I had grieved the marriage already in my own way during those long, quiet months. The sadness was still there. I won't pretend it wasn't, but the shock wasn't. The world tilted sideways. She said, I want to stay in the house while we sort things out. I said, that's fine. I'll make arrangements. She seemed surprised that I didn't argue. I think she had prepared herself for a fight. The world tilted sideways, maybe. When the fight didn't come, she didn't know quite what to do with herself. The moved into a granny flat behind my son's place in Mudgee the following week. It was small, a single room, a kitchenette. The world tilted bathroom barely big enough to turn around in. But it was clean and it was quiet, and my son and his partner brought me dinner most nights. I had Biscuit with me. He seemed happy enough as long as his water bowl was full and I was nearby. The legal proceedings began in October. The world tilted sideways. Her solicitor, a woman from a firm in Orange that I recognized from their advertising on the local radio, sent through a letter of claim shortly after the divorce application was filed. The claim included the matrimonial home as a joint asset, the contents of the home, and a percentage of my superannuation. The car, or rather, the world tilted she assumed was the car, was listed as a vehicle registered in my name. She did not know about the Land Cruiser sale. She did not know about the trust. The world tilted sideways. I say she didn't know. Let me be more accurate. She may have known about the trust because the transfer was registered on the land title and was therefore a matter of public record. The world tilted sideways. Solicitor should have found it. That's what due diligence is for. If they didn't look, that's not my doing. When our solicitors exchanged financial disclosure documents in November, the world tilted things on the table, the full picture. The trust structure, the property transfer, the valuation, the loan agreement, the Land Cruiser sale to my son at market value, the current vehicle, all of it disclosed in full, with supporting documentation. Geoffrey told me her solicitor's response was in his words, the world tilted sideways. There were accusations of deliberate asset restructuring. There were demands for explanations of the timing. There were suggestions that the trust transfer should be unwound. The world tilted Safri replied calmly, with the full documentation of the timeline, the valuations, the legal basis for the transfer, and the fact that every transaction had been conducted at fair market value. The world tilted sideways, properly documented and registered with the relevant authorities. He also made one other point, which I thought was rather elegant. He noted that the matrimonial home had never been in Cheryl's name. The world tilted sideways. Not for one single day of our marriage. She had never been on the mortgage. She had never paid a cent of the principal, interest, rates, or maintenance directly. The world tilted contributions to the marriage had been real. Geoffrey acknowledged that, but the specific asset she was claiming as a marital home had never legally been hers in any form. The court proceedings took until March of the following year to resolve. I won't pretend it was easy. Family law in Australia is not fast and it is not cheap. I spent a significant amount on legal fees. The world tilted sideways. I missed sleep. There were nights in that little room in Mudgee when I stared at the ceiling and wondered whether I'd handled things the right way, whether I'd been fair. The world tilted version of myself I wanted to be was the same as the version who'd spent months restructuring assets. I kept coming back to the same answer. I had done everything properly. The world tilted disclosed everything. I had not lied. I had not hidden. I had been thorough, the way an electrician is thorough, checking the wiring before the power goes on, not after someone gets burned. The world mediation session happened in February. Cheryl and I sat on opposite sides of a table in a conference room in Orange. I hadn't seen her in nearly 5 months. She looked older. The world tilted. Suppose I did too. There was a moment early in the session when I caught her eye across the table and I felt something. Not anger, not satisfaction. The world, just a kind of ancient sadness for both of us. For the two people who'd stood in that church in Armadale in 1993 and meant every word of it. The mediator worked through the asset schedule methodically. When the trust document was tabled, the property valuation, the formal loan structure, the evidence of fair market transfer, her solicitor objected, said it was an attempt to defeat her client's claim. The mediator asked Geoffrey to respond. The worldfree walked through the timeline. Date of transfer November 2022. Date of divorce announcement September 2023. 10 months. The walked through the registered valuation, the independent assessment, the lodgement with the land registry. He walked through the Land Cruiser sale $47,000. The world tilted Cyver confirmed recipient my son at full market price. Her solicitor said that the timing was suspicious. Geoffrey said, with considerable patience, that the timing was documented. The world suit to final settlement took into account Cheryl's genuine contributions over nearly 30 years of marriage. The world tilts he received a portion of my superannuation, a negotiated figure that Geoffrey and I had discussed and that I agreed to. She received the household contents she wanted. The world tilted sideways. She received a cash settlement drawn from refinancing part of the loan structure, which was fair given the length of our marriage and her non-financial contributions over those years. The what she did not receive was the house itself. The property was held in the trust and remained there. What she did not receive was the Land Cruiser. Because it no longer existed as my asset, it belonged to my son legitimately. What she did not receive was Biscuit, who was, and I will defend this to my dying breath, my dog. I found him. The world tilted sobbed up to Dubbo for him. He has slept at the foot of my side of the bed for 12 years. No reasonable mediator was going to take Biscuit from a 63-year-old man living in a granny flat. The world tilso didn't fight for the dog in the end. I think even she knew that one was a stretch. The paperwork was finalized in late March. I signed it on a Thursday morning in Joffrey's office. The world tilted sideways, shook my hand and told me I'd handled myself with integrity throughout the process. I appreciated that more than I expected to. The work to Mudgy in the BT-50 with Biscuit on the back seat. His head out the window, ears back in the wind, entirely indifferent to the legal proceedings that had just concluded in his favor. The world tilt is 14 months ago now. I am still in Mudgy, though I've moved out of the granny flat into a small rented cottage closer to town. The world's got a decent veranda and a yard big enough for Biscuit to roam. My son comes for dinner on Sundays. The world daughter flew down from Brisbane last winter with my 2 granddaughters, and we spent a week together that I'll remember for a long time. The older one, who is 7, the was decided Biscuit is her best friend in the world. She is probably right. The warehouse in Orange sold earlier this year. The trust executed the sale at current market value, $580,000. After clearing the documented loan and the associated costs, the proceeds remain in the trust structure managed by Neville, available to my children eventually. Not to fund a new life for me alone, that felt right. I'm not rich, I'm not triumphant. The world tilted sideways. I'm not crowing about outsmarting anyone. What I am is settled. There's a particular peace that comes from knowing you handled a hard thing the right way. The world tilt perfectly. There's nothing perfect about the end of a long marriage, but honestly, with proper documentation, with legal advice, with enough foresight to act when action was required, the world tilted sideways rather than reacting in panic after the fact. There are things I've learned through all of this that I wish someone had told me earlier. The world tilted sideways. The first is this: know what you own and know the paperwork behind it. Not because you're planning for war, but because clarity is protection. If something is yours, know exactly why and how. The world tilted sideways. Sort it out now, not when someone is sitting across a table from you in a mediation room. The second is this: in Australia, the family law is not simply about whose name is on a document. Contributions, all kinds of contributions, matter. The world tilted sideways, who raised children and managed a household for nearly 30 years, has made real contributions, and the law recognizes that, as it should. The walk into a situation thinking that because your name is on a title you hold all the cards, you don't. Get proper advice early. The word is this: transparency is not weakness. I disclosed everything, every asset, every transfer, every document. My solicitor told me that full disclosure, properly executed and properly timed, the world tilted strongest position. He was right. The moment you start hiding things, you are playing a game you cannot win in an Australian family court. The world tilts and registrars have seen every version of asset concealment. They are not impressed by it, and they have tools to unwind it. The fourth is this: look after yourself during the process. The word of the house: if you need to, let your kids help you. Eat properly. Sleep when you can. Get the dog whatever anchors you to ordinary life. The morning coffee, the Sunday roast. The world tilted side foot of the bed, hold on to it. Legal proceedings can go on for months, and you will not survive them by staring at documents alone. The world tilted seventh, and this one I feel most strongly: grieve the marriage. Actually grieve it. Don't just move into tactical mode and treat it like a business problem to be solved. It isn't. The world tilted sideways, something that was for a long time real and valuable and yours. I cried in that granny flat in Mudgy more nights than I'll admit to. That's as it should be. The world who doesn't grieve a 30-year marriage probably didn't really show up for it either. I showed up. I just also showed up for the paperwork. The world tilted is a lesson in all of it. Not for point scoring, not for internet clout, but genuinely in the quiet way that only comes from living through something hard. It is simply this: the being thorough is not the same as being cold. Protecting what is rightfully yours is not the same as being greedy. And doing things the right way, slowly, carefully, the world to the lights checked before you touch the lev wire, is not a trick. It is just how you get through without someone getting burned.